All right. Hi, I'm Henry House, back here at Percones Live, and I'm interviewing Hertford Town Council candidate Martha Borders. And we have a small list of questions, and we hope to get through this in a little bit less time than our first candidate interview. Maybe we can cut down by at least half or better. So, Martha, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm glad we could arrange around your schedule. Can you tell me why you're running for office?
I'm running for office. I have lived in Hertford for 10 years, and I've been following council for 10 years. And so I'm very well informed about what's going on in the town of Hertford. And I feel I can contribute a lot only because of my knowledge and also because of my background in retail, management, and banking.
Okay.
And also I was an entrepreneurial person with my fiber art work. So I feel I have a lot of abilities that I can be tapped into, and I basically want to run for council to serve the town of Hertford, to help them out.
Well, you touched on the second question with experiences and background.
Yes.
Okay, but me as a voter, okay, what is the impact that you're going to make? How are you going to measure your success after the 4 years of serving on town council? What is your metrics?
Well, basically my metrics are, first of all, to get us in a better financial position. But mainly I'm interested in the areas of the infrastructure and basically cleaning up the dilapidated buildings in town. This is my main focus.
Okay.
And I have talked about that for 3 years. 3 years ago I talked about it, and then I talked about it again recently on council. And we have had no buildings torn down in 5 years. And even though I know they have 4 buildings that they're going to tear down, nothing has happened since the beginning of July. And I think it's critical for us to start cleaning up some areas that are dilapidated so we can encourage growth of new houses, new businesses to come in. I'm really pro-business and pro-bringing in new people to revitalize our time.
And we have that a little bit later to talk about the issues with our code enforcement within town.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Okay, don't want to focus about what's happened in the past, okay, but let's focus about what's in the future. But from your experiences in the past, how has it prepared you best to get things moving forward with town council?
Basically, the best way to approach that would be to cooperate with everybody on town council and get our vision focused on what we want to do. I think there's been obstructionist people on town council who have prevented growth from going forward with the town, and I think that's needs to change.
But in life experiences, I'm sure you've been in the professional realm, and you have confronted people who sometimes can be obstinate and difficult. How have you dealt with those situations that have prepared you for either a citizen's concern or another council member's obstinance to a point you want to share?
Well, basically, I'm trying to approach all of this from a common sense point of view, which is really how I've tried to live a lot of my life. So, for example, when I was in retail mortgage banking, I ran into some huge financial problems in that particular area that I had to bring forth to the president and vice presidents and had to do a lot of research to try to get it resolved. And I had to sort of be careful because I didn't want to point fingers at actually who created the problem, because I was just a manager at that time. But through my research, it was everyone made it was clear that the problems had developed with not paying off mortgages. So that was one area. Another area was in my retail management. I ran 2 stores for an Italian family up on Cape Cod for 7 years. And I had to do all the hiring and firing for those stores. And so I learned to get pretty savvy about assessing how people work and what their abilities were, their positive and negatives. And so I can bring all that experience. And then in running my fiber arts business, I was a teacher, I sold my work, I gave lectures and talks around the country. So I was involved with a lot of people. I ran a quilt guild at one time up on Cape Cod. I formed a new quilt guild on Cape Cod. So I'm used to managing a number of people and getting into the direction that we want to work, but truly it has to be a cooperative effort.
Okay.
That's the most important.
All right. Multiple point question here. What's your impression of the current way our town council is functioning?
I think that Ernell, our mayor, and Ashley, our pro tem, has finally gotten a handle on how to handle the obstructionists
Okay.
on town council. So I think there's been a vast improvement over the last 4 or 5 months.
Okay. If elected, the composure of the council is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see yourself fitting in? I mean, currently we have Councilman Jerry Memlich,
Mm-hmm.
Pro Temp Ashley Hodges, and Mayor Ernell Brown. The 2 seats are empty. Could go all one way split or all the other way, depending upon how the voter turnout is. So
Right.
how do you, if you're elected and it's split, which is a conceivable proposition.
Right.
How do you see yourself fitting in?
Well, I'm fitting in basically to support Ashley Hodges and all the work he has done for the infrastructure issues that we have and the problems that we face. And I want to actually get more educated in that department and help support him, because we do have a serious problem with our infrastructure. As far as Ernell goes, our mayor, I support the youth center that she's starting. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Seeds of success?
Yeah, I think that's what
Okay.
it is, and I'm very positive on that. Also, I support the Riverfront project also, but from the realistic standpoint that we're going to have the county involved in that also. So not only do I want to get on council to work with everybody, I want to also develop a much stronger relationship with the county commissioners and Frank Heath as we learn the different strategies that we can use to help raise our town up.
Okay. You said what you want to align with, but how would you distinguish yourself as different? How would you maybe say, we have an issue or whatever, and, some council members are getting direct phone calls about various sundry items. How would you distinguish yourself? Is there something that is on the town council plate today that you would wrap your arms around and say, excuse me, rest of the council members, I really want to spearhead this? How would you stand out from the other council members?
Well, I would push for the demolitions of houses, which
Okay.
that has not happened.
So your
Absolutely, that would be one of my prime interests. Also, the infrastructure issue. It's a huge issue, so we need to address that, and that is a very strong focus.
And you said Ashley's very much engaged with that.
Yes, I would like to
Okay.
get more knowledge from him on that, so I can't speak extensively about it because I know he's done a lot of research. I definitely want to support him, and I also feel that our utility bills are high. I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And that's part of the infrastructure issue. Where I live I can walk 5 minutes from my house and I can find 3 leaks that are leaking all over the streets that have not been able to be fixed.
And particularly our water and sewer bills,
Yes,
much higher. Our electric utilities, they're sitting on, from what I understood from a previous interview, $1 million surplus.
well, yes, but that's where we have to improve that area also.
Okay, would you support having smart meters in homes?
Yes, both water and electric.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And from the previous statement that was shared with me, electric is exclusive of the water and sewer issue. So the $1 million in electric essentially is just sitting there unless we can expend it on
Right, but if you look around town, there are a lot of leaning telephone poles that hold electricity that need to be replaced. I would love to see I know this is probably unrealistic, I would love to see underground electric in downtown, no telephone poles. I would like that all sort of cleaned up, but
Looking to put stuff underground.
well, just for now in the commercial district area. We need to beautify it. We need to get it more up to date.
Or maybe take it down the alleys behind the main road.
Exactly.
Okay,
You know,
so we trouble less of the
right.
main traffic.
But, also with the electrical, I would like to see, I know this is a little out there, but it's not really. I would like to see us have solar panels on our, town hall.
Okay.
I would like, in ways, all of the town buildings that we own, I'd like to see solar panels up there. I'd like to see us invest in that kind of green energy.
That's interesting. I'll say it's interesting because, some of my research basically it shows it's a 10 to 12 year return on investment, and by the point you get to 10 to 12 years, you're diminishing returns on solar panels. Essentially, you're not seeing it.
I've heard that. I'm of the belief that the technology is expanding so quickly that is going to be changing. That's sort of my thought on it.
Okay, well,
Why not set up our own field of solar panels?
okay, well, we can start with the little solar cells and go out and water and watch them grow.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
and then they also there's some also interesting little wind technology of just little winds little units like this you can put up on the top of your roof and the wind can generate.
Right.
But I haven't fully researched that area,
Okay.
but
And there's hydropower, we could dam up the Perquimans and
don't think that would work. Exception to that.
the flow tide to generate electricity.
But we know that there's not a big flow of tide up here in the Perquimans. Except we have hurricanes.
Yeah, it's have the flow through it to move it.
Right.
So we're topic a little bit. How is your voice going to be heard? We have a current council member who is also running for office that refuses to talk to people in the press, and we have another one who expounds greatly, okay, to the press. How would you look at your voice? Accountability to the people.
Oh, okay. Well, I talk to the press a lot. I've
Okay.
been in the Perquimans Weekly a lot.
And not in the blogs, right?
No, I
Okay.
I have been walking around downtown talking to people. And I basically went around and knocked on as much doors as I could and
Okay.
talked to people and got a good feel for what the people are really concerned about here in town. And quite frankly, it's the infrastructure and it's the road conditions. Those are the two biggest issues. And then the waterfront was talked about later on.
Okay.
And the other big issue, of course, is pulling down the dilapidated buildings. Those were the three biggest issues that everyone wanted to talk about. Oh, and our high utility costs.
Okay. Activities for our youth in our community. When they get out of school, I know we have a basketball court over at the community center, and there's no lights there. We have a court, oddly enough, it's illuminated, but I don't see it being utilized as much as the basketball court does. And I think that's partially a county issue.
It is.
And it's also, if the city pays for the lights, it's a different story. They're happy, the county's happy if we pay for the lights to go up there. But activity, so the kids in our community have something to do beyond sitting in the house playing a video game or walking up and down the street.
No, I agree with Quentin on that issue.
Okay.
That there should be lights on the basketball court. Then there should be a time set, though, maybe 10 or 11 at night where the lights go off. As a consideration for all the neighbors that live around there.
It can be a time situation,
Yes.
and I've been at high schools that their lights are on a timing meter, and at a certain hour, they shut off.
Right.
So, all right, let's talk about the waterfront. I read your response in the weekly about where you see it going. Can you share with the audience?
Okay, well, I basically thought that the waterfront project was a wonderful idea. It gave us a beautiful blueprint of how to move forward in Hertford. But it also addressed our infrastructure problem, in that they didn't feel we could really go forward unless we dealt better with our infrastructure issue. They also said in the report that in order to do the development, we probably need the help of the county.
Okay.
Now,
Can you explain why?
Money.
Money. Okay.
Money. And also, they made a good suggestion about having a visitor center at some point. So there were a lot of wonderful suggestions, good suggestions about cleaning up downtown and creating, different ways to make the downtown more attractive. So that I think it's a great blueprint, but I think realistically we have to get the county involved with that type of development. And I personally love the idea of having the boardwalk and having some kind of a bulkhead to keep the water from flooding into the park.
The Missing Mill Park.
The Missing Mill Park, because we're not using it properly at the moment, and it's a beautiful space. But it's going to require the whole county being involved, and I if we decide to go with the county, that we want all the input from everybody in the county, not just the town, on how we would like to develop Missing Mill Park.
Now, what would be the incentive for the county to be invested in the waterfront?
Because it will bring in more tourists, it will bring in more business, it will be a pleasant place to go, to have events.
County commissioners, are you listening? I'm just asking. Okay, Hertford is the town. It's where business happens, and no offense to our people who live in Linfall, Belvedere, and the other communities around here, but it will expand businesses, which increase tax base, which help both the town of Hertford and the county.
Right, and also, if Missing Mill Park had the nice pathways that were shown in the plan, it would be a very pleasant place to meet people, talk with people, really get to know all of our citizens, because it's really, I believe it should be a place for everybody to enjoy.
Now, there is concern from parts of our community about the impact on housing that is around. It may price them out of the market because of, if they are owning.
They're worried about gentrification.
Okay, we can say that, but if they own their property, it actually becomes a bigger asset for them.
Right.
If they are renting property, there's no reason really for the rent to go up unless there's pressure in the surrounding community on rental properties. But it does also hearken into our issue on code enforcement, which we have a couple of places down on the topic. So I'm putting some words in your mouth if okay, but you talked about infrastructure, our water and sewer issue. We have a real significant problem in the community because our infrastructure is at least older than myself. It's 60 plus years old. More than likely it was all cast iron put into the ground. Some of it is starting to fail. How would Martha Borders tackle that?
Well, it's actually a twofold problem. The first issue would be we would need to get grant money to help us repair these problems. And since we are in a very we are on the distress list for towns, we're able to get more grant money. But the second issue, which a lot of people are not talking about, is that within the Public Works Department, which some of this work would fall under, they're having a hard time retaining people. What is happening in the Public Works area, and I've talked to Pam Hurdle extensively about this, is that people come in and get trained and then they leave a year later to get a better paying job. And it's sort of like, it's not as extreme as the police department where we were training,
Had a very
people, and then we had a high turnover rate, but the turnover rate is still fairly high in the public works area. So that is an area that has to be addressed along with the infrastructure if we really want to get things fixed.
Okay, I understand that, one of our issues with the water sewer supply is the sand, which is,
Yes.
our soil is naturally sandy, is getting into the sewer system and then
Right.
essentially plugging up the lines when it gets to our treatment plant.
Right.
Have you looked at ways to address that?
Well, I haven't really, and I know that the street sweeper would help a little bit with that situation, but I have not investigated that,
Okay.
but logic tells me that's going to be an ongoing problem, even if we get new sewer systems in. It's still, I mean, how do you stop sand from flowing down sewer?
A sanitary sewer should be completely sealed,
Right.
allowing ingress of...
Well, that's leaks due to cracks in the
Right.
pipes.
So if that is updated and replaced, then the
Yes.
sand should not be getting in.
That's true,
Okay.
yes. But, we're gonna have to replace a lot.
There's other technology out there, and, she had a problem with her sewer going out to the street. And there was a conversation about epoxying the pipes. It's essentially a bubble that runs in and seals things off. And if the pipe is cleared of obstructions and you can route it out, that's potentially a less expensive way, because to replace the sewer system, to replace the pipes, I'm staring out here out my window of my front door right now, and that road was freshly paved, and we would be tearing it up and then repatching it. So it's not just the price of fixing that.
Oh, it's a fix.
If we're going tearing up the road, then your idea about putting the infrastructure underground maybe could come to fruition.
Right.
Okay.
No, it is a critical issue. And when you drive around town and you see the roads all sloping down like this, you know that there's water leaks going on to cause the erosion. When I drive up Market Street up near the railroad tracks, there's huge dips in the road. I mean, Market Street is in bad shape.
I lose a tire in some of these.
Yes.
The
Car.
potholes have been filled up quite a bit, at least, where I've been driving.
Right.
I presume in other parts of the town, but the soil with the erosion is just going to
It is,
disappear.
and Market Street is in bad shape.
Okay. Our police force, we made a radical change at the beginning of July with our police force. And they disbanded the police force and secured a contract with our county sheriff.
Right.
Okay? You've been in Hertford for 10 years. You've experienced the former Hertford police force. When I interviewed Councilman Jackson, he said that we had 3 cruisers essentially per shift under the former police force, and the current police force is putting 3 cruisers on the road. So we are equivalent. Tell me
Well,
your experience in the last 3 months versus the experience in the previous 10 years.
okay, well, I would probably need to go back a year or so.
Okay.
Or 2 years, when I started to pay attention to this particular issue. And I spoke before town council when we had those meetings about whether to keep the police force or not.
Okay.
And everybody concentrated on the money, which was fine. That certainly was a valid point. But the other valid point is that we have 5 town council people now. And to make a quorum for a council meeting, you only need 3 people. So what could happen is that if we had a police chief and a council meeting was called and 3 council showed up, 2 council members could fire that police chief. So there is undue pressure, I believe, under our present situation, that there could be a level of corruption that could occur with 1 or 2 councilmen having over-influence.
You're suggesting it could have happened.
It could happen, yes, and that's what I spoke about very strongly before town council, and it's a very legitimate concern. Now, as far as Shelby goes, our sheriff, he is elected by the county, by everybody.
Right.
So he answers basically to himself and whatever the guidelines are for North Carolina.
Well, he answers to the citizens of
Exactly.
our county.
Whereas our police chief could basically have to keep 2 councilmen real happy, or 3, to make sure he didn't get fired. And I don't think that's the most efficient way to run a police force.
Okay. Have you been impressed with the transition?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm behind Shelby 100%. I think it's been a wonderful decision, not only for our safety, but also for saving money for the town that we can then allocate money in other ways.
Well, I think, when it comes down to community safety, dollars and cents take second place to community safety.
Right, I agree.
And to move forward, is there things that you would like to see our sheriff possibly focus on to make Hertford a better place to raise a family?
Well, I personally think Shelby's doing a good job, and I think he does do reach out to the community, and I think he spends time talking in the school system to the children. So, you see, Shelby's born and raised here, so he has an advantage over you and I. He knows a lot of people, and I think that's critically important in our community, to have somebody that is that connected. And just by the way, I've had nice interactions with Shelby and the other policemen that I've talked with, so I think we're on the right track.
And that wasn't with your hands on the hood?
No.
Okay.
I've never had to.
I did have, I've talked to a couple of his deputies, and I've been impressed with their thoroughness and effectiveness. I mean, their focus is on crime. After the first town council meeting, I was pulling out of the parking lot. I hit the gas just a little faster than I should have, and I threw some stones up, and there was 2 deputies sitting across the street. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to get pulled over. I saw a little later, and I said, is that the... He goes, listen, respect the speed limits in town. Don't be a nuisance, and don't break the law. And you're not going to be on a radar screen. The fact that you threw some stones up, sometimes it happens. I thought that was slightly humorous, because that's anecdote of my interaction with the sheriff.
Well, yes, and when I first decided to run for office, I did go talk to Shelby about safety and all of that. But you did bring up an interesting issue about speeding. You have been here and you've not had the benefit of having an open bridge yet.
Yes.
And speeding coming off of the bridge is going to be a very big issue.
Well,
I lived down there, it was a big issue when I first moved to Hertford. And that is something that I will be stressing strongly to Shelby, that once the bridge is open, we need to monitor speeders.
Well, actually, a lot of the people who have recently moved in here and the current residents, we're going to set up speed cams, and we're going to do citizens arrest along the street. So,
can you do that? I didn't know you could do that.
I'm joking.
Okay.
We have had the luxury of not having traffic go up and down the street. We've had construction equipment. That will change here in the next 8 months.
Right.
Or less, and I'm not really looking forward to cars going by my bedroom window at all hours of the day, but I chose the house I knew.
Right.
So let's talk town manager. Okay. Pam Hurd is, she is staring at the sunset, and she's slowly walking towards it. We're looking for a temporary town manager. There's supposed to be a meeting of our town council on Wednesday night, and I understand that maybe a decision this past Wednesday. I understand that a decision hadn't been made.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
But they're trying to find a temporary town manager, which by North Carolina code, we must have a town manager.
Yes.
So we have the issue of getting a temporary one in, and you probably will not be sitting in office by the time that determination is made.
That's fine.
But the next town manager, next permanent town manager, if you had to list criteria of what you would like to see besides, the knowledge necessary to do the position. What characteristics are you looking for in them?
Well, probably I would like to see a town manager that actually is people savvy, because he's going to be supervising a fair amount of people,
Okay.
and I think that's critically important.
So we're talking essentially the HR side.
That's important.
Okay.
I also think he needs to be very familiar with infrastructure issues. As much as he acknowledges he's got on that, I think that's another critical issue we have.
Okay.
It's what I learned when I was watching town council when they had the League of Municipality gentleman speak. He basically tried to indicate that each town manager has positive and negative traits, and you have to balance those out to see what's really important for what you need. You know, it would be great to find a perfect town manager that could do everything perfectly.
No, they don't.
But that doesn't exist. So I think the particularly the human resource area, having infrastructure, having ability to understand what grant money is and how to handle it, are critical. And it's in this time and age, we need to have somebody that is open to all people.
Okay.
Which doesn't hold prejudice against people. And I mean, that's a very easy thing to say, but I think we need to look at that very carefully.
So they don't necessarily always have the expertise in a given field, but they have to have enough knowledge to know when they don't know what they don't know.
Yes, that's very important.
Okay. They're involved in interaction with the town council. A lot of town manager positions, essentially, they work with the town council to develop the template of the structure of the meeting. And then they'll sit down and say, you know, hand it over, Mayor. First item on the agenda is this. I turn it over to you to preside. And then if someone raises a question or wants to challenge something that is said, it is directed through them to say, okay, council member Borders, you will have your next opportunity to speak moving forward, and then their burden is keeping the 5-minute time limit or 2-minute rebuttal or whatever. They relieve the burden of the town council running, and they're running the meeting with the town council, dealing specifically with the business at hand.
Well, I was under the impression that the mayor runs the town council meetings.
Okay.
That's sort of been how it's been
Right.
done.
Okay.
You know, so I think we have a mayor that is very capable of doing that.
Facilitate to keep you on point.
Yes.
And that's, you know,
Right.
helps move things along.
Basically, I feel when the town manager is there is that when the council is discussing questions and they do have need a clarification, that's why you have the town manager there to clarify some points that were not clear. So I think that's important. It is very critical that we get a good town manager in. I cannot stress that enough.
Okay.
That is probably, as much as I stress the infrastructure issue and the dilapidated buildings, I think getting the right town manager is the #1 priority.
And not to narrow it down, but based upon, would you be looking for a younger town manager that could spend a long time potentially in that position, or someone who has developed experience to deal with the challenges that the community faces?
I can't answer that question because each person is individual in how
Okay.
they approach life. So, yes, a younger person might not have the experience, but they might have to get up and go. Whereas an older person might have the wisdom, but might not have the get up and go that we're looking for. Basically, I want to see the type of town manager that we encourage to not only to move into the town or very close by, but is willing to put roots down And I think roots are important. I'm not saying that we need to hire somebody within the county, but we need to have someone that really wants to maybe grow their family here or work for 20 years and then retire. So I want to see someone who's invested in our community.
Okay. You realize to bring someone from outside the community, there's going to be the expense of the relocation package and everything like that. And
I don't think that's a big deal.
Okay.
I think it's just that we want to have someone that's going to stay for 5 or 10 years or 20 years and is really invested in helping our town.
Okay. Hertford town image. When you came here 10 years ago, I'm making the presumption, and if I'm incorrect, I'm sure you will correct me, that it was perceived differently a decade ago compared to the way it's currently being perceived.
Yes and no.
Okay.
From my experience, because I basically started watching town council 10 years ago when I first moved here, because I was involved with the Citizens for the Preservation of Hertford, and we were trying to have the S Bridge not located here but over by Edenton Road. We thought that would be a much better place to put the bridge, so I was involved with that from the very beginning. So I watched town council from the very beginning. And what I noticed on town council is that there was no progress being made in many areas of the town, including infrastructure. And I don't want to say it was the good old boy network, but it was pretty close to that. So in watching them and also talking to a good friend of mine who's my political consultant, Joanne Morris, she was on town council for many, many years, and she got quite frustrated when she would bring up suggestions to improve the town, and it was, no, we're not going to do that, we're going to save money instead. So I think the big frustration early on with me was seeing that we didn't have a council that was very progressive. Now, moving forward to now, we do have 3 council members that are progressive, that do want to improve our community. And I think that is the way that's the way Hertford needs to go.
Now, based upon the 3 critical things I had when I moved here, and from doing quick research on Hertford, was the lack of ability for the town council to get through an agenda.
Yes.
The issue with violent crime that had been occurring in our community in comparison to the per capita rate. Okay. In a per capita rate, we have a higher incidence of violent crime within Hertford than a lot of communities, not necessarily the immediate vicinity, but across the nation in general. And then our education level, which doesn't fall underneath the purview, but I feel of the town council, but I feel it contributes to the crime issue that we have in the community. A better educated community will have better opportunities for jobs and hopefully direct them into a different path rather than doing things that we don't want to see done to our neighbors. So those were where my concerns were. How do you polish up that image?
Well, personally, I think that our educational system is improving vastly. We have a very good superintendent now. I feel that we're going to be making headways in that area.
Well, the education it takes 12 years, for the influence of the superintendent to really be realized, because it's starting down at first grade kindergarten. And yes, it's going to have impact on some of the high school students. It's going to have impact on some of the middle school. But the greatest impact is going through the elementary. It's progressive, as you were using. Right. Her influence over the school system is going to be really manifested several years beyond today.
Well, that's true, but also Tanya is born and raised here.
Okay.
She knows a lot of people. She knows a lot of way to get things done, and so I think your time frame is a little bit longer than I think she can improve that time frame and make it shorter. I think she understands the needs of our county and the education system. And I completely agree with you. When we have a better educated population, then we can have a better educated council, we can have a better educated town, we can then move forward
And,
in many ways, but preserve the history and the heritage of the town at the same time.
right, and I'm not advocating that every student that graduates from our high school at Perkins County needs to have a college degree.
I agree.
Okay, there are viable ways to provide for your family without a college degree.
Right.
But then the most important thing is that you have an employment and that you're successful at what you do.
Right.
And people who, you held down a job, I held down a job, and some they wonder why we got up and went into work.
Right.
When the sun's at the end of, on Friday, our paycheck hits the bank, we're rewarded for the good work we did.
Right.
And that's the value that we need to understand, that it's the contribution back into our community from work that we do that improves our community overall.
Right.
Our finance, okay, we're getting down near the end of the list here.
Okay.
Our finances in the town of Hertford, we previously had an 85% surplus. It's been down to a 15%. You've communicated to me offline, and I will clarify because I did go back and do some research. Obviously, 2019, when it was said, oh, we're at 15%, elections were held in November of 2019.
Yes.
So on the people who are currently sitting on town council is actually non-factual because their ones would have been less than a month.
Right.
On that. So that money was really dissipated over the period of 2 years.
Well, it was very frustrating for many of us sitting in town council meetings in 2019 and watching how 3 of the members just spent money right and left that we should not have been doing.
Okay.
And I won't even get into the Tahoe story.
The auditors report.
They weren't, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That is a perfect example of that. So there was a lot of irresponsible spending done in 2019, which caused our property taxes to go up the next year.
And that's the other thing that I wanted to correct.
Yes.
There was a statement made that the property tax had not been raised in, quote, years, but 17 cents was added to the property
Yes.
tax rate in 2019, in 2020,
To help our budget.
to try to bring the budget back into neutral.
Right.
Okay.
It was a very difficult decision on the part of our 3 council members to make that decision, but realistically, we had to do it because of the amount of money that was spent in 2019.
And that's a current town council that's sitting now that
Yes.
voted in the increase. Do you recall what the vote was?
It was probably 3-2, but
You don't recall off the top
no,
of your
I
head?
don't.
Okay. I was curious because we have.
It could have been 5-0.
Okay.
I honestly don't remember.
All right. There was another suggestion in the earlier interview that we have a 1-mile buffer zone around the town that we could expand into to improve our tax base. What's your position?
My position is that I have not researched it.
Okay.
And quite frankly, we have a lot of lots here that can be built on.
I think it's about 80.
And there's a whole lot.
Okay.
I mean, I live up in West Hertford, and we've got fields there that could be easily developed.
Okay, but do we have infrastructure in
No, we
place to
don't.
do it?
No, we
Okay.
don't. But within our town, we've got lots of lots where the infrastructure is right there to be used. So I would have to research that buffer zone. I am skeptical, but I don't really know the answer to that. But I feel we should just encourage our lots to get developed.
Now, in other parts of the country, when a builder wants to develop an area, they bear the burden of putting in ground,
Right.
okay, versus the city. Now, the city, or town in this case, would have to have the ability to handle the additional volume created by a new neighborhood, or an expansion down a current road that currently doesn't have housing on it.
Right.
That would be the burden of the town. but would you be supportive of charging, if we had a new neighborhood going in, charging the builders for the infrastructure
Yes,
improvement?
absolutely, yes.
All the way down to the paving
Yes.
of roads and et
Right.
cetera. Okay. And, this is going to dovetail into our final topic.
Mhm.
But we also have senior members in our community who get to a point that it's really difficult for them to, property taxes going up hurts you.
Well, that
You're- It's you, it's me, okay? We all have only X number of dollars that are sitting in our bank account or coming in
Right.
on a regular basis, and when you increase by a 17-cent rate or even a 2-cent rate, it impacts what our bottom line is.
Right.
So, we have a sales tax in the community of 6.25%, and that's town managed, from what I understand. Would you support increasing potentially the sales tax?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't support increasing any taxes.
Okay. So, as someone who has been here for 10 years, you're retired, I believe.
Mhm.
Okay. So, how would you help the senior citizens? Would you support a program maybe to give them a reduced tax base?
Well, I haven't researched this, but I believe the county has something set up for senior citizens to
Okay.
help with that particular issue. Now, within the town itself, that's a difficult question to answer, because if you reduce the tax for seniors in town, that puts the burden on the working class.
It does.
And I don't think that's entirely fair. When you do retire, you have to take all of that into consideration.
They have to send kids to school.
The children are our
Okay,
future.
all
So I don't know the answer to that, Henry. I would
Okay.
have to research it further, but I feel that the middle class in our town has had an extra burden put on them because of what's been going on in the past.
Okay. Landlords in our community. Yeah, I'm using the.
Yes,
Would you support a registration fee for properties?
yes, absolutely, yes.
Not necessarily a different tax rate for the properties, but a registration fee
Yes.
for properties that will support a code enforcement, as we're transitioning, a code enforcement that the town can, let's say I'm renting my property and from you, and, Miss Borders, my plumbing's leaking, and we'll get to it. Okay, I pick up the phone, I call the code enforcement department or individual, because, the town manager doesn't need 17 different hats to wear.
Right. Huge issue.
Or, listen, I'm having, I need an exterminator out, which is probably more common in this area than, leaky pipe, but, I need an exterminator out, and my landlord's not paying for it. And it's outside my property, not inside my property.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this, I am not totally up on this issue. I do believe strongly we need a code enforcer. I know for now it's with the town manager and we need to deal with that. But I do know that Councilman Minlich is very familiar with this type of issue from I believe when he was living in Raleigh, and he briefly had talked to me about it.
Okay.
So, in the way he explained it to me, you have to be careful about what the laws are in North Carolina regarding code issues and landlords. And I think it's a bit of a sticky wicket.
Okay.
But Jerry absolutely has the knowledge about this, and I would actually talk with him more to understand that, because we want a code enforcer. We need to clean up the town.
Right.
I think that's critical. But we also need to stay within the guidelines of North Carolina, and I think this is where Jerry has some experience.
And if we had a registration of properties, it would be a little, and then a routine inspection on the properties.
Right, well, they had that up in Elizabeth City at one
Right.
point. I think they have since dropped that.
Okay.
Only because I have a friend that has rental property up there. So it's a question of the legalities in North Carolina, how we can approach it, but certainly if somebody is renting and they're having a serious water leak, that should be addressed by the landlord.
And you know, we had a situation in the most recent town council meeting. There was a gas leak in the building.
Yes.
Okay, these are simple things that, you know,
That's huge.
we have to get some type of accountability of being able to go back to who is the property owner, why is this situation happening, and what is the recourse that we have.
Right.
And you know, I understand, fully understand that if we put a additional fee for rental properties, that fee is passed through to the tenant.
Of course.
Okay, it's no different than if you put a corporation tax that the cost of goods is going to be increased on our
Right.
purchase.
Well, just like if we raise the property taxes, that's passed on to the renters,
Right.
you know.
I really encourage for, you know, the town council to get behind the, you know, some state programs that could encourage all the community citizens to invest in their community, to purchase a property, you know, have a pathway to access that of home ownership, because the investment in homes is the strongest way that we can build this community.
Yes, and I think it's particularly important that we educate the lower income people in this, because they don't fully grasp how important it is to have a good credit record.
Right.
To be able to save money for the down
And
payment.
there are programs
And-
that the city can, that our
Yes.
town can involve to help that with that education.
And I think that's very important, because it's sort of difficult to explain, but I do understand from the past that a lot of the black community did not really have the ability to own homes and pass them on to further generations due
Okay.
to a lot of the racial issues. But I believe that that time has now ended. And we should be able to encourage low-income people to have that kind of access as best we can. I think
Well,
it's very important.
You know, some of our lower income families are receiving government support. There's potentially an opportunity that with that support they're receiving could be enough to cover a mortgage payment and more. And
Right,
you know,
because they're paying rent.
and you know, if we find a pathway to ownership, I think it does the entire community better.
Well, it makes us proud of our community, because once you own a house, most people then want to keep their property up and keep the value up. And I think some people in this town don't understand that if we start tearing down these dilapidated buildings, it's got nothing to do with gentrification, because many of these buildings you couldn't ever live in, couldn't ever renovate, that alone will encourage other people to keep their properties up. It's as simple as that.
But the borderline properties, what do we do about those? The properties that, okay, they're still salvageable. And I know it's not your house, but let's say it's your house, okay? And you have a problem with, you know, a high utility bill because your windows aren't sealed.
Right.
How do we help our fellow community, our fellow citizens, without burdening the taxpayer?
Well, I know that Tim Bryn had done that survey to get more houses in the historic district,
Okay.
so that there's more funds available, I believe, through the state and through the government to help with those particular issues. Now, I myself bought a house 8 years ago over in West Hertford that had never been renovated from the time it was built in 1964.
Okay.
So I had to spend my own money to put a new roof on, to put new windows in, to do new plumbing. And I did that on my own, because I didn't fall under any historic guidelines where I could do that. So I think Tim had a very good idea as far as if we could designate more area for historic, we could then get more, they could get more funding from the government to help with these kinds of issues.
But if we, you know, if we had the involvement of a grant writer,
Yes.
you know, the access to, with the town manager of, and knowledge of someone within the community of what is available.
Right.
People who have been in their houses and now are on fixed income and find, well, now my roof's leaking, I can't replace my roof. Do we have resources available to help them? I mean, would you support maybe getting a tech program? Students at school out there, oh, well, you know, but listen, they have overgrown weeds at their house, instead of,
Right.
you know, charging them $300 to send the town out, we maybe get a block grant to help support doing things along those
Yes,
lines.
I see no problem with
Okay.
anything like that.
All right. You were in a previous lifetime an artist. I guess you still have that talent didn't disappear.
No.
Okay. Well,
To sleep.
okay, I'm going to ask you to paint a picture with your words. Okay? Instead of with a brush or with, you did fiber art. Okay. What would be your image of Hertford in 10 years?
Okay, my image of Hertford in 10 years would be to see the waterfront developed,
Okay.
to have most of the dilapidated buildings pulled down, and to see new housing built on many of the lots, and to see, quite frankly, our roads in much better condition. Because if our roads are in better condition, then you know that the infrastructure underneath has been fixed.
Right.
So that's the vision I feel, and in improving the beauty and the look of the town itself, it will be a hub for the whole county, and people are going to want to come in and spend more money. It's like, you know, we can go now to Edenton, go to beautiful downtown Edenton, and spend our money there, and go up to Elizabeth City, but when you come here, there's just not as much opportunity to go sit out by Missing Mill Park and have a picnic, and
Well, to be fair, residential property surrounding our downtown. I mean, essentially our downtown is a block.
yeah, I know.
You know, our downtown is very small. I've been into Elizabeth City, I've been into Edenton, and they have these beautiful venues that you
Oh,
drive
yes.
down. So we're a little bit more challenged there.
Yes.
But yes,
But the potential is there.
we have
absolutely
some
is.
businesses in downtown now. It would be nice to have a little bit more expansion and diversification down there, so there's things that people can do.
Oh, yeah, I would like to see more black business owners downtown.
And, well, I mean, we have several already.
Right,
You know, the waterfront, if that, you know, pending the development is successful with it,
Yes.
which I think it will be, that will expand the opportunity zone for businesses to locate into.
well, also, if we can keep enough of a green area out there in Missing Mill Park, we can have venues there, you know, all sorts of craft things and, you know, different things for the children
Right.
that we can do that we're not really doing at the moment.
Okay.
And I think that's important. We have a beautiful waterfront. Let's use it.
We have a beautiful town and community.
We do.
I thank you very much, Martha, for being with us today.
Thank
I wish
you.
you all the success in your campaign.
Thanks.
And I would ask you if you can like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. That would also help us grow the audience so more people can hear our sit-down discussions with members in our community. Thank you very much.